I'm not a pediatrician, but I stayed in a Holiday Inn Express last night.
Etan Walls, you are the COO of Allied Physicians Group. Welcome to PedChat.
Thanks, Zach. Thanks for having me.
So for those who don't know what Allied Physicians Group is or what you do, can you give us the 1-minute elevator pitch?
Allied Physicians Group is a primary care pediatric group mostly. We have over 100, almost 150 providers in around 35 locations in the metro downstate New York area. We've been around for 12 and a half years, and we are in some cases, in some places, the grandfather of some of the pediatric supergroups that are out there. Allied has been built on a dyad structure where we have administrators and pediatricians who work together, and we are very much physician-driven and physician-led. That is the biggest takeaway here. The goal here is to have really strong physician-led pediatric locations. The challenge is that not every pediatrician is a strong business leader. And so if we can augment what they do with what we do very well and what my subject matter experts do very well is help run the businesses.
You know, all the pediatricians that you have, are you more of like an operational guide for them, or do you get into the health outcome part of the equation?
I think that what I do is I do a lot of listening. And I listen to what are the challenges, right? You know, in many ways, you become, you think up of an idea on how to make their life better by hearing about their challenges during the day. You know, and then we work through those challenges. One of the ideas that came up, Dr. Firestein and I were talking, and she had somebody who had switched from a pediatric subspecialty, just general peds, and was new in our office and was a little bit slower. And so how do we train her? Okay, well, I said, have we thought about recording the visits or giving her a model, a location to test out how she's doing things and what her interaction is, and recording that. You know, I coach Little League, and I like to record the kids when they're swinging the bat. Why do we shy away from recording physicians when they're seeing patients and doing a post game with them on how they did with them? I try to think out of the box to come up with creative solutions to make their lives better, and that is comes from listening to how their day goes, when it's going good and when it's not going good. One of the things that I like to do with Allied at some point, and we're not there yet, is to create some kind of fellowship program for nurse practitioners to teach them pediatrics beyond what they're doing right now. There are programs like that, but I think that it can enable us to help train the mid-level providers of the future.
What is one thing that you've implemented that has made the biggest impact on children's health in the past 1 to 2 years?
We have a bonus matrix program. We've gotten a good amount of quality incentive money from the payers, whether Medicaid or commercial. And we needed to figure out the best way to distribute it to our partners. The organization as a whole was being rewarded for the work that I was doing in terms of quality. And these are HEDIS measures like well visits or vaccine compliance or other just clinical measures. And when you start digging into the world, it may be different in other states, but I suspect that it's not necessarily different. The payers have a hard time allocating the funds based upon a patient, because patient reconciliation is still a challenge. So at that time, 4 years ago, we felt like we needed to come up with an incentive program for how we distribute that money. And what we did is put in clinical, administrative, and citizenship measures to ensure that. But it all started with, in my view, the well visit. If we did the well visit every year on every patient over 2 years old, and then did 8 well visits on every patient from the time that they were born until the time they were 2, you would be able to hit every measure and be 100%. How it impacted us a lot was we were able to look at things like drawing lead in the offices. Could we change our workflow and be able to draw that lead, even in some cases where we're not making any money off of it, but we're able to get that measure completed. And in those cases, it was huge impact on the patients' lives because we're being more proactive with getting them in for their well visits. A well visit with a physician is not the same as a sports physical, and we need to be much more vocal in this community about how different it is and how impactful a well visit can be for teenagers and middle school children who may be going to get a sports physical at an urgent care center, but doesn't get that full physical from their pediatrician.
Let's stick with, you mentioned urgent care and children, going into a CVS to do a sports physical. And while they're there, what I imagine is going to happen that, CVS as a nurse practitioner is going to upsell some other services, right? So theoretically, it could start eating into the pediatrician's revenue.
Mm-hmm.
That's one area that I'd love to hear your insight on, and how we embrace it, or how we ensure that our children are still, flourishing. Because as you said earlier, a sports physical is not nearly the same thing as a full well child visit.
So I'm going to give you a book recommendation, Zach, and for your audience, because I just finished it and I read it within like a day.
Okay.
Which for me is pretty amazing because I don't normally have the time and I don't normally have the ability to sit and read a book. I just read the book Bad Blood about the Theranos debacle. I think we need to learn from that. Doing a startup in healthcare and doing a medicine startup that is patient-facing is totally different than any IT startup that is going to happen. You need to have physician involvement in this. And it's vital because patient care is at the core of what pediatricians are all about. And the future of medicine, as much as I love the fact that CVS is involved in it and Walgreens, and they're not going to be able to provide better care than the pediatrician who had years of experience and time and effort will then in this environment. And patients seek out the relationships. Convenience is important, but there's a relationship aspect. One of the keys for me to that is seeing the utilization of mommy groups within Facebook, and the comments that are made by new mothers who are in their early 20s, and mothers of 4 or 5 or 2 who are in their 40s are very, very similar. They want a pediatrician who has a relationship with their child. And so when we're talking about the commercialization of pediatrics from a CVS or a Walgreens or an Amazon or anyone like that, we need to be careful about what we're talking about. First and foremost, it's going to allow pediatricians who are of the highest quality to be much more successful, because these people are the Burger King and McDonald's and Taco Bell of medicine. That's what we're talking about. What we are able to provide is going to the highest quality steakhouse. It's the difference between buying a Pinto and buying a Porsche. It's It's between going to Walmart or going to Tiffany. Pediatricians are Tiffany. They need to act like Tiffany. They need to be the best brand. They need to be the brand people want to be at. It shouldn't cost like Tiffany, because pediatricians are not, what we do is not expensive. What we do is preventative. What we do is provide vaccines that are important for kids. Important. So as we talk about the future of what pediatrics could be, I look at it as it's going to be a lot like what it is right now, but it could be bigger. What I think it needs to be is that it needs to be more aligned across the fractured environment that we have it right now. There are big players in the space, and in order to compete with those big players, we need to have pediatric groups that have partnerships across state lines and are fighting for pediatricians rather than just kids. And that's the drawback of the AAP. The AAP does a fantastic job with what they do, but pediatricians are not first, and that has to be. We have to have a mechanism for pediatricians to be first. That's where I see the future of pediatrics.
What are some ideas that you have where we can start to put pediatricians first?
I think telemedicine, first and foremost. It's the biggest it's the biggest new technology to come out that's starting to shape the way people are utilizing medicine. And when it came to urgent care centers, many pediatricians said, why would our patients want to go there? With telemedicine, many pediatricians are trying to get ahead of it and say, I need to be there first because I don't want the same thing that happened with urgent care. Now, the other side of this, though, is we need to start building up services for our patients and having frank conversations with them that this is an additional service that your plan may not cover, and it's going to cost money. And in some ways, we need to start having conversations around these things cost money, and we need to act a little bit more like a business, not a lot like a business. And we have to recognize that that is part of what we do as this organization within Allied. And how do we still have a balance of this is something that's important and good, and we provide a great service, but we want to continue to get paid. Does that make sense?
Etan, what are you most excited about?
Allied is starting a management services organization called Adjuvant. What we do on a day-to-day basis is consult to our physician owners, provide them with the tools and information that they need to be able to run their practices. We believe that we can do this with other practices, and then hopefully they want to have their own Allied version in their own state, and so we help them build their own Allied, and it's putting some mortar on the fractures of pediatrics throughout the country and building more of a national practice together. And I think that that's possible. You have to do it in the right way. There's not a ton of money in it, but as we build scale, there could be things that we could share services on and save money on and look at things in a different way. Pediatricians look at medicine in a much different way than other specialties do. And that's why I'm so excited about it.
Well, Etan, this has been a pleasure. Thank you so much for being a part of PedChat.
Thank you, Zach. This was awesome.